What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for tuning in. On today's episode of Convention Not, we've got a very special guest, DeMarvelous Carter. And yes, that is his real name. Some people call him DeMarvelous, some people call him Marv, but when I met him, I actually called him Mr. Carpenter because he just builds things. I first met DeMarvelous when he was living in Detroit, Michigan. He's a producer, and he would go on to build some of my favorite records that I've created in the past. But do you hear that right now? He also built this track that you're hearing underneath my voice, which comes from his newest business venture, Infinite Audio. But let's hear it from his mouth as he discusses his journey to where he is now and how it was all one big leap of faith. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, I probably have the lowest bar for what it's supposed to sound like, so I'm gonna defer to Skrilla on being the sound check guy for sure.
One more time, Marv. Just
check.
Whoa. Okay.
I got something in my ears.
It works.
There we go.
There's a little coffee up my nose.
Now that we got the connoisseurs and microphones hooked up, we got Marvelous coming in from California. We got Chris. Are you Cleveland proper, or is it like Shaker Heights, East Cleveland? I feel like I always ask
it's
this.
Cleveland Heights, but that's still Cleveland.
I blend them together. I've been listening to too much Kid Cudi.
That's Shaker Heights.
That's Shaker Heights, right? And then
Which is not
we've
Cleveland.
got with us today, Marvelous Carter, who is I think, longtime friend of Chris. I feel like y'all have known each other some time, but also happens to be from Detroit, like Mike and I are. And so we're welcoming him today. I don't know that either of us are really all that great at giving introductions. So, Marvelous, maybe you could handle that yourself before we start lamenting on the Rust Belt and hearing about your new products that are coming out, which is something we really want to talk to our audience about. A lot of people starting podcasts these days. So, who are you? Where are you from? How'd you get here?
Yeah.
Give us your background, man.
Cool, man. Cool. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I am from Detroit. I grew up in the Metro Detroit area. I was actually born in Flint, so I'm a Flintstone. Let me see here. Just jumping straight into the music, man. Again, I started music around like 19 years old. There was a teammate of mine and also a roommate who was rapping 24/7. And one day I asked him, "Yo, who made the beats? How did that happen?" And he told me, I made it. And I was like, what? And so from that point on, I've been crazy about, music production. And I've always had a curiosity for it. And I just kind of developed my skills from there. I had a beautiful run from 2006 to 2010 and producing locally on the underground circuit in Detroit. Worked with a lot of people within that time frame, had a lot of fun. And then I took a little break, relocated to the Bay Area, and started my music career back up, and ended up relinking up with Chris, and really got heavy into the TV and film and commercial gig. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and now I'm producing music for YouTubers and podcasters like yourself.
Yeah, for those of our listeners who paid attention, we made a music switch recently. We were using royalty-free, some kind of music, something, again, just like the technology we don't understand. And we recently switched to Infinite Audio. That is Marvelous's it's a new venture, right? Relatively new for you.
Brand spanking.
We're going to want to talk about way more than that. So you bounced, also economy crashes in Detroit. You bounced around that same time period when things got rough. Could you talk to us about, or is it inappropriate to ask a producer which artist that you worked with, or some of your most proud work?
Absolutely. During the time when I was in Detroit locally, the local guys know there, I worked a lot with Stretch Money. I worked with Big Sean, a name that you guys will know, Ace Hood, who used to be signed to We the Best with DJ Khaled. I work
Another
with Briscoe, another one, right? I work with Briscoe, who used to be signed with Cash Money. It's so crazy how music changes because now, everybody's just kind of doing different things and in different places, right? And then Royce the 5'9", another guy that you guys probably know that's from Detroit.
Oh, don't get Ryan started.
That's his heart. That's his heart right
Detroit
there.
Favorites.
Yeah.
He just shed a tear.
Did he? That's his guy?
That's his guy.
He loves it, Royce.
I produced then a lot of local artists, man. It's so crazy because I don't even know if I should even get into it right now or when we're going to jump into it. But when I decided to start taking music seriously, you guys are Michigan guys. Are you familiar with Art Van?
Yeah. Art Van Furniture?
Yeah.
Of course.
So Art Van Furniture, me and my mother was at Art Van Furniture, man. I was living with my mom at the time, and I seen a sleigh bed that I wanted, and it was like $1,200. And I said, if I can swap 12 beats for $100, I can get this bed. So I went, started networking so I can go buy a bed, right? And started selling music to everybody. Ended up meeting someone at the Guitar Center who's a great friend of mine. We went into a business venture together, and from that point, we made a lot of money really fast, had a lot of success locally really fast, and ended up moving right downtown Detroit on Woodward and Grand River, right across the street from Tiger Stadium and Ford Field at Merchants Row. And we were down. I couldn't believe the amount of success we had so fast because it's literally, we sat down and developed a game plan, and it all worked. And we were like, oh wow, it really worked, And before you know it, we had more business than what we can actually handle at the time, and so it was a beautiful situation. So from a sleigh bed to downtown Detroit, right?
I'm still thinking about you seeing that sleigh bed. Like, how many Midwestern? Like, that's such a Midwesterner story. You got to start with y'all know Art Van, right? Because right away that paints a picture, right? Like, yeah, we all know Art Van, but you never went to Art Van without your mom, right? Like, that wasn't, by the time you reached a certain age, it was I'm not going to Art Van. Fuck Art Van. I don't know why, but you would just avoid it. So when you tell me that you were at an Art Van with your mom and without the details, you didn't even have to tell me what it was, but just that there was something at Art Van that made you realize no, I'm about to start chasing my dreams. Here's something I really want. It's at Art Van, which I'm still just giggling about because you just have to, man.
Well, that's almost the story of, I think the Midwest hustle is good, but maybe more specifically, that's a Detroit hustle story.
That's what I mean, man.
And so I think a lot of people who are outside of Detroit or know Detroiters or come to know them because especially during that time frame when the economy got really bad, and for, people that are around our age demographic, I think there was a mass exodus of Detroit. And then I think everybody could identify, going to a furniture store with your parents is one of those times when you start to understand the difference of wealth between families because
100%.
There's and Chris, I don't want to make it too Detroit, but first there's Value City furniture, right?
That's
have the Ohio, right?
Yeah. I don't think there's much that doesn't reach Northern Ohio.
Right. And then there's the Art Van level. But even then, when you walk in, it is a place. And by then you understand how much stuff costs. And it's a big purchase for any family to go rework furniture. Right. But then you start to understand that inside of there are all these different things. And if you want to get some of that stuff, you got to learn to hustle quick in that world, in that world. So, does it go that was pretty poetic what you told, which is cool, right? But we all know that a career in music, the bed maybe came a little bit quicker than the Confidence or the Loft in Detroit, which is quite a crowning achievement at that time. Detroit's really rebuilding, and that's a cool spot if you ever get to visit Detroit. But how does moving from making beats on Fruity Loops or whichever program it was at that point in time, 15 years ago, start to become a business, so to speak? Like, do you go hand out CDs like everybody thinks from 8 Mile, or like, do you know some people? Like, how does that get rolling that way?
I think it was the dopest thing in the world because it's so organic. I was so intimidated getting into the music scene because I felt like there were people that were already doing it that was so much better than me, right? Sure. And I didn't know a rapper. I didn't know another producer. I didn't know anybody that did what I wanted to do. So I literally just had to jump in their head first and see what happened. And so the first thing that I did was I just Googled open mics and looked at where open mics were happening so I can just get a feel for local artists. And so the first place I went to was like the Bullfrog. And that's on like Telegraph.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's like the first place I went.
Wait a minute. Telegraph and what?
Oh,
it's
my
in
gosh.
Redford.
Yes, it's in Redford. Yes.
Oh, shit. Okay. I don't know the Bullfrog. I've never been there before.
Yeah,
so
I've seen a lot of Detroit artists there.
Yes, that's one of the places. They used to have them at all kind of bars through Westland. I mean, you name it. Any bar turned into an open mic spot in the Metro Detroit area because it was crawling with up-and-coming artists at the time. And I think the dope thing for me was I literally sat there and pressed up CDs with about 22 beats on them. And I went to these open mics. I got some business cards printed up. And it's so cool. Actually, I got something for you guys. Hold on.
I love this. This is
DeMarvelous
cool.
Left the mic.
So check this out. At the time, I was producing beats in my mother's closet. All right? This is a picture of me in my mother's closet.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and that's the first dollar that I made from making beats. That's why I have that up
So
there.
you approached this business first then, as a young kid. I mean, I'm sure you were a music fan, but you approached it from, and I'm curious to hear, Skrilla, you're not speaking up, but like, that's a different approach from what I understand, knowing your background, which is that like, you as an artist did not necessarily approach music business first. It started making beats, same thing, right? Couple years apart, 4, 5, 7 years apart, but like, were you pre-programmed family wise? Like, are you like from like a business family, or like how, like, you know, I feel like most people start making music because they love music, and I'm not underselling. I'm sure that you love music, but like to have even just that insignia of that first dollar 15 years ago right in front of you in you know, such a place, how does that get rolling that way? Yeah, it's a different mindset. Are you Diddy? Wait, you mentioned Diddy earlier. I'm sorry.
Was that towards Skrilla? Was that towards Skrilla?
No,
or
that's
was
you.
Me?
That's you. We know Skrilla's story.
Yeah.
At least.
I think it was, you know what? The reason why I was so passionate about it, because music production was like such a mysterious thing for me. Like I never knew how it worked. So anytime I would listen to the radio, I wouldn't even care about the artist. I was like, man, how did they make that thing in the back? Like, what is that called? Even when I was a kid, and my mom, she used to buy me little Casios from the Goodwill and just throw them in her room, you know, and I never knew why, because no one in my family had like a music background. But she would just buy Casios and put them in a room, and I used to tinker around, but I never understood how it all came together into a full-on production. Until again, I went to college, and one of my teammates, you know, he was rapping, and then I figured it out. But once I found out, like, oh, I can actually do this, I was extremely inspired to do it. But again, I was extremely afraid to do it because I didn't have any experience, and I felt like the music industry was a big monster waiting to eat me up, right? You know, when you don't have any experience doing anything, you don't know anybody doing it, you're kind of afraid. So I think it took me a year to actually leap out on faith. Again, like that bed was the first thing that I said, you know, this is actually tangible. I can sell a beat for $100, right? So let me see what happened. This is a good, you know, test experiment. And so it started from there, man. And then once I seen that people actually liked what I did, that changed everything for me. Like it eliminated all of my fears that I had initially.
Yeah.
What I realized was it doesn't matter who was here before me. It doesn't matter who's better than me. There's a tribe out there that likes what I do. And every time I handed out another CD, and, you know, I was going from, you know, open mic to open mic and wasn't really expecting anything to happen. And I think like 2 days later, I started getting phone calls like, hey, is number 7 sold? Hey, I would like to buy number 8. Hey, what about 18? And all of a sudden the entire CD sold, like all 22 songs on the CD sold. And so I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I went and got my bed.
You got 2 beds.
I got 2 beds, but that gave me all the confidence that I needed. I was extremely excited. I said, man, I can do this. And I started feeling myself a little bit, right? But it started from there, which let me know like, hey, I can start taking this seriously, and I can, the dream that I've always had since I was a kid, I can actually execute on.
Well, I got to point out, though, and one thing I think to be clear here, like, we're not talking about 15-year-old Marvelous, right? We're talking about like 19, 20-year-old at this point.
Absolutely.
And like, I mean, I get that you're stepping into a new arena, but you had some confidence just as a person, right? You're a pretty impressive athlete. You had some success in some other really competitive areas before, right? So I'm not taking anything away from like the gnarliness of you walking into that open mic and like selling your work. But I feel like it's if you're sitting out there as that 15-year-old who never played the sports or never had anything, and it's just like, oh my God, how did he have the courage to do that? Well, there's some building blocks there, right? Like you had some success in other arenas that you were able to kind of maybe tuck under your arm a little bit and walk in there not totally exposed. And, I just feel like that built you up.
Believe it or not, it was completely opposite. Like
it took away. Okay.
Yeah, it was complete opposite because believe it or not, man, like public speaking is one of my favorite things to do. But at the same time, it's the scariest thing for me to do. It scares the crap out of me, but it gives me the most liberation, right? So going into those open mics, I have every negative thought that you can think of. These guys are going to think I'm corny. These guys are going to know I'm producing beats on Fruity Loops. These guys are going to know I'm inexperienced. They're not going to accept me, right? And it probably took, in fact, I didn't even speak to anyone until the end of the night when they was shutting down because I was so afraid.
Just kind of hiding in the corner, right?
Hiding in the corner. I'm like, hey, you didn't come out here for any reason. Just hand your business card out, hand your CD out. If they call, they call. So that was my coward way of dealing with it. Like, oh, hey, check these beats out, check these beats out, check these beats out. And as people was walking by, I would just hand them the CD. I didn't even pitch myself. I just take the CD and they started calling. And then I started kind of getting a little Kobe Bryant-ness about myself, right?
Here we go.
I had to. You knew it was coming. But
all right. Well, on that, I'm going to immediately derail because I want to know when you two connected. Like, hold up.
Before you get into that, Marv, can you talk about Fruity Loops? And because there might be some people who are listening, they don't really understand what Fruity Loops is and really the significance of Fruity Loops when it comes to production.
Absolutely. So FL Studio, Fruity Loops, is what almost every producer starts on. But the crazy part about it is I've never let it go. I still use FL Studio. I just merge it with other programs. It's my baby. It's how I got in the game. And it's a production software that allows you to sequence, right? And you can put your drums, your keyboard, your snares, your strings. You put everything inside of FL Studio and you can structure out your song. And I think it's the most user-friendly. And because it is the most user-friendly, a lot of people are drawn to that first. So I remember I was using FL Studio and then I made the jump to Pro Tools. It actually took me 1.5 to 2 years to actually say, okay, you're going to learn Pro Tools and you're not going to touch FL Studio for 6 months at least, right?
You had to wean yourself off it.
Had to wean myself off of it, but every time I keep coming back. And so what I use now, I use FL Studio for my sequencing, and I use Reason, which is my second baby, and a great friend of mine and a producer, Dave Etherton, who's also with Infinite Audio. He actually sat me down and showed me how to sequence and use Reason and how to add Reason with other programs and stuff like that. And so you got to figure out what your comfort level is. And if that's your beans and rice, that's what you got to use, right? And I've never moved away from FL Studio. I absolutely love it for sequences purposes and also absolutely love it for the drums as well.
And FL Studio or Fruity Loops was so significant in not just your upbringing or my upbringing, but really young artists and young producers growing up, especially in that, late 90s, early 2000 time period. Because, look, a drum machine at Sam Ash or Guitar Center, I mean, that might set you back a couple $100. Like, who in high school has $600, $700 to pay for a drum machine? So,
exactly.
You go holler at, the computer guy at the high school, and he hits you with the cracked version of FL Studio.
Gotcha.
Don't steal. But I'm just saying, and that's how you learn. I mean, it's really like that's a lot of people's first introduction into sequencing and creating drum patterns.
Okay.
And I mean, listen, Fruity Loops has birthed a lot of artists and a lot
How long has this? Because Ryan, you've talked about it pretty knowledgeably in the past. I've never heard of it before. I never knew what you guys were talking about. It's called FL Studios and everyone just calls it Fruity Loops?
So FL Studio is the abbreviation for Fruity Loops.
But what? All right. So Ryan, can you help me? Why the hell would they name it Fruity Loops? Why was that?
It's a weird name. I think a lot of people.
I mean, you're talking probably 20, it's probably 20 years old. So when it started out, there was a freeware version of it, right? And then if I remember correctly, the freeware would run out and then you would need the code with which you would get that code and hack it, right? However, your boy would have the code and that would work and then it would change or whatever. Adobe Suite is similar to that for folks that use Adobe, not the same way now. And so back in the day, when you were naming your software, I think, this is early software for me. I'm more in web design in the 90s or web publishing, but you just need something that works. And a lot of times it was just a name. And then all of a sudden you have a business that builds and you're like, oh shit, well, we don't.
That's what it's just such a weird, I'm like, what the hell was their intended demographic? 5 to 7 year olds? I mean, I just never. Yeah, dude. It's Fruity Loops.
That Fruity Loops.
It was you would download it. I became introduced to it from electronic music DJs in the late 90s, 2000s, 2001, 2002, college, right? And so I understood that. And then, of course, you start to hear it in music when people mention Fruity Loops, just song after song, over the years. But I think that that was the beginning era of software. Marvelous, you said you have another software product, which, listen, we could make the rest of the show just talking about that. We should set up some time to talk about it offline. But so now us, same demographic, right? We're years along the road and we're like, fuck, I want to develop another product that's going to go in there. I'm going to drop I don't know that FL Studios, I'm not familiar with the product offering, but they have something that masters music after making the beats, for example. And so then you got to introduce another name, but you already have this big name. So then you usually figure out that's how we're somewhere FL Studios would come around. It's another different episode. It would be maybe an S Corp or a C Corp that you would start to hold those businesses so that you have these different entities and you could take investment from each of them. And I'll kind of trail my voice off now because that's not the point of this.
I just thought it was a goofy name and wondered if there's a story behind it, but.
Hey, podcast listener, thanks for joining today. I'm wondering, is this the type of show that you like to listen to over and over again? If it is, take a second, jump out, subscribe to us on your podcast channel. And if you really dig the show, reach out to us and suggest somebody that you know that we might like to interview. We'd really appreciate it.
So can we get back to how did your guys' paths cross? Because am I correct in that, Chris, you're a couple years older than Marvelous?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so Marvelous, you're doing your thing in Detroit. It's blowing up faster than you can handle it. I mean, I don't mean to put words in your mouth there, but you got more work than you can keep up with, right?
100%. And let me start off by saying this. Chris changed my whole perspective and absolutely changed my life when I ran into him. Changed my life because when I met Chris, I realized what it felt like to work with the artist that you truly meshed with. And for a long time, I didn't even want to sell beats anymore. I just wanted to work with Chris. Because we just get each other creatively. I was like, you know what? It's not even about the money. Let's just keep working because it's this feeling that I feel right now when we're working, I want to feel it all the time. Yeah. This is what music feels like. Because as a producer, to be completely honest with you, your production is like your kids. You spend hours away from your real family. You spend hours away from everybody else. You get into this mental state and you put together this piece of work that you care about a great deal. And then you give it to an artist and then the artist just
drops the ball.
The ball. And you're like, oh my God, I put 6 hours of my life into that. And you just got on there and talked about Cookie Crisp, Yeah. So it's just unfortunate, man. And so sometimes, it was hit and miss. And I worked with a lot of great artists. But I think I felt the real magic of music of you got it from the production side, and then you got it from the artist side, and then when it both comes together, it's like the Power Rangers, right? When they morph, right? Oh, yeah. And so when I heard Chris on one of my records, and to go back and talk about how we met, it was just like, yeah, this is what music's supposed to feel like. You know what I'm saying? But Chris, I used to sell music, and I ran to Chris's cousin. And he was like, yeah, man, I got a cousin that's pretty dope, man. He's making moves. And I'm like, really? And he said, yeah. I'm like, everybody got a cousin that raps, And you guys still there?
Uh-oh, we lost him for a second.
Oh, yeah,
you guys? There we go. Uh-oh. Yeah, there we go. I'm like, everybody has a cousin that raps.
Got him back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Cool. And so he's like, no, he's really, really dope. And I'm like, okay, cool. He's actually from Cleveland. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, he's going to be here within the next couple weekends. You guys want to come out? And I'm like, all right, no problem. And I really wasn't taking him serious. And he called me the morning of, and I completely forgot Chris was going to be in town. And he called me the morning of, and I made plans for that day. And he's like, hey, man, Chris is here. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot he was going to be here. I was like, you know what? I made plans. And he was like, man, this is business. You got to take this serious. His cousin, completely ripped me a new one, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, man, let me go over here. And so, I drug my feet in going over there. And first thing I do, please don't hate me when I say this, but I got to tell the facts. First thing I do when I get downstairs to the studio, I'm like, man, you look like Ludacris. I said, you freaking look like Ludacris, and your name is Chris. This is crazy. And so he started laughing, and I know he didn't really care for me telling him he looked like Ludacris. But when I sat down and I was going through the beats, it seemed like he just was liking everything that I played. He's, oh, this is good. I want to rap to that one. I'm like, okay, cool. I played the next one. Oh, this was even better than the last one. I want to rap to that one. I'm like, okay. And he's telling me all the records, and I think he ended up getting 5 records that night, 5 or 6 records that night. And I was like, all right, cool. Now let's see if he can actually rap. He's spending money.
I was gonna say, this dude might just have a checkbook, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I already like you. You invested in yourself.
Yeah.
And so we do one of the songs the same night. He wrote it the same night. And he got in the booth, and as soon as he started rapping, I was like, yo, this kid is something different. This guy's something different. And I sat in the studio and just was like, hey, man, when did you leave? You leave tomorrow? Let's do about 3 more of the records before you leave. I don't got to go to sleep. We can just stay here all night, And so we literally stayed up all night just, crafting the records and working together and making it all come together. And what's even greater about that is the fact that outside of music, we just developed such an amazing friendship where we were literally there for each other in the most complicated and hardest times of our lives, which built a relationship or a brotherhood, so to speak, that can never be broken, man. And that's just a cherry on top from being able to work so well with the music.
Oh, for sure, man. And you know what's crazy about that? And I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but when we were in the studio together and, I'm feeling this pressure, like, here comes DeMarvelous. Like, this is my first time seeing like what he looked like. He's like, it's like tall, handsome guy. It's like his fate was like just crazy. I'm like, yo, man, he had these waves too. I'm not like hitting on him or anything like that, but I'm just like, yo.
But no, this dude's dialed in.
Yeah, he's like, come down here like, he came out of a fashion magazine or something like that. And I'm like, all right. So I'm feeling some pressure, and there were other people in the studio. So, like my cousin was there, his business partner was there. There might have been somebody else there, but I don't even remember anybody else in that session. I just remember DeMarvelous, and he had sort of this like Kobe mentality, right? So he wouldn't like show his emotions. He kind of had that Mamba mentality going on. And I just said, like, I got to deliver. So I wanted to write that song then and there and try to make something that he would be happy for, on his beats.
Whew.
Do you remember the Ludacris thing?
I do remember the Ludacris thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I get it all the time, but I definitely remember the Ludacris thing.
I never actually put two and two together, but so I live in Atlanta most of the time, Marvelous. But like, so when you get off the Atlanta, like, and you come up the escalator, now that you mention that, just this moment, there's a picture of Ludacris. And now that, like, especially since we've been really working on the show, we worked a lot on the show specifically over the past like several months. Now that you think about it, yeah, you do. Well, and you also got that happy energy about you, which is like, that's a big part, I think, to being a magnetic personality. I mean, certainly that served him well, but that's not you. I mean, we're talking about 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Luda.
Dude, I'm trying to. Sorry, Ryan, but have you ever been in a studio like that, Ryan? I mean, I haven't. I kind of have an idea of what you guys are talking about, but it's just based on movies and shit like that. And like when you started talking about that initial interaction and the pressures you're both feeling and those insecurities you both have, right? But you both show up with your game faces on, and it's like most of us are all doing that all the time. We're just faking it, man. Right. As long as I front, as long as I keep my shoulders high, everyone here is going to think I belong.
Right.
But deep down, holy shit! If they all know how scared I am, but like in that environment, damn, dude, like you could fall flat on your face, right? Somebody's vouched for you. That's why you're there, Marv. Someone's vouched for you, Chris, right? But like, there's a point where it's going to go eye to eye, right? And you're not competing, but you don't want to be the one who shit the bed, right? So in a situation like that, are there 4 other dudes there, Marv, that might buy your shit if Chris doesn't? Like,
it was specifically for Chris. It was Chris's session.
So is this like a fancy studio or is this like somebody's garage?
It was actually in the night. They had
Which could be fancy, don't get me wrong.
It was very beautiful. It was a great studio. I think you guys invested a lot of money into that studio. Your cousin did. Yeah. And so, big old control board, big old booth and everything, man. So it was
more stuff to make you feel like, shit, I better have brought my A. But that night, you guys, like, do you remember, like, specifically more than one track came out of that initial night?
We completed one track and started on 2 other ones.
Mm-hmm. Damn. But like you said, more than anything else, like just having that initial experience with someone, like I'm being dramatic, sorry, but I'm honestly thinking about it as like, that's going through some shit with someone. Like your first meeting has all those emotions from like your own shit before you get in the door to that interaction to the completion of like, we did it, man. Like, that's like, hey, I just met you. Let's go be on the same team in this football game together, get our asses kicked for a little bit and come out on top. Like, that's a bond, man. Like, that's an experience to go through together. And I love that you guys.
I met Chris riding high too. So I'm like maybe 6 months away from like the art band story. So I met him early on in my producer career, but I've just sold out of my beats, right? And people are calling me for more, and I'm getting invited to more studios and more projects. So now I'm kind of like, okay, I belong here, right? So I did walk in with a little bit of confidence, but at the same time, any producer knows the insecurities that you have when you sit down next to an artist and you want him to like your music.
Yeah.
So I think my
Yeah.
time to show up or feel like, okay, this is nerve-wracking is when I sit down and we're pressing play and he's like, oh yeah, this dope. I'm like, okay, 1 for 1. Go to the next one. Oh, this one better, even better. Like 2 for 2. So I was like, all right, cool. And so then it was his turn to show a face when he jumped in the booth. And so when he jumped in the booth, he delivered. And I was like, all right, this is good. This is amazing.
We got it.
And
Yep.
from then, it had been on, right? So we developed this relationship. And I want to tell you all a DeMarvelous story. And this was, so most of the time when I got tracks from DeMarvelous, he already had them completed, right? The first time I really worked with him on the spot saying, hey, can you make something custom? I had been hired to make a song for Les Miles, the football coach. This is when he was at LSU. So he launched this recruiting website called lesmiles.net, and LSU hired me to make this like song for its website. So I'm like, all right, cool. I got the perfect producer. I want DeMarvelous to do that. So my cousin, and I wasn't even like, didn't have a car at this time. He drove from Detroit or Michigan to Cleveland to pick me up, drive me to DeMarvelous' studio, right? And have DeMarvelous basically make this custom beat. And I remember just kind of saying like, hey, I kind of want it to sound like this. And I had never seen somebody just craft a beat so masterfully the way that he did. And he was playing on the keys too, which I didn't even realize like he was so dope at. It was cool.
Yeah, now that's when the pressure was really on. I'm like, man, I got to make a beat from scratch live. Like, this is the first, and that was the first time I ever did it too. So he was like, I want some horns and I want this and I want that. I'm like, all right, well, let's see what happens. And I think I made that beat in like 40 minutes too. It was quick.
Yeah, I think it was less than that, man.
It was less than that.
So was that like
send you that
custom?
song so we could play.
Is that like, so you guys go, did you do the song that night then too?
Yeah.
You got the lyrics that night?
Yeah, I did record it there. Yeah,
I did record it that night. Yeah. We made the beat and recorded it that night.
Wow.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. So I'd love to swim in these waters forever, but I know there's some downs, because you're on a high, you're on a real, and it was a steep high, right? Like you got to that height pretty quick. I mean, don't get me wrong. Please feel free to share how the height of the heights, but I want to kind of talk a little bit about what happened after that. What came next?
So when we made that song, that was actually in Ann Arbor. We were maybe like 10 minutes away. Let's talk about the low that kind of went into the high. So after I sold those beats at Art Van, sold the beats to get the Art Van bed, I went to the Guitar Center, and that's how I met my business partner at the time. And when I went to the Guitar Center, I told him what my plan was. I said, hey, man, eventually I want to get that Casio keyboard that y'all seen in that the photo.
Yeah.
That's the keyboard that I actually bought from the Guitar Center. And so I said, hey, I want to get this bed and I want to get this keyboard. And this is what my plan is. I'm going to print out the CDs. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I hear this every day from every producer that comes in the Guitar Center and plays on all these keyboards. And so he didn't pay any close attention to me. He's a salesman. All he wants to do is make a sale. And I go out and I sell all these beats. And I come back, like 3 weeks later, and I'm like, give me the keyboard. Everything's sold out, And he was like, what? And he like, are you serious? So I'm dead serious. And at the time, I'm living with my mother. And so he was like, man, we got to talk about what we can do because, my house, I live with my mom too. And I got somewhat of a setup downstairs where I got some keyboards and stuff, but I think we can go into business, man. The way you just made that happen seems like, we need to do something. I'm like, all right, cool. And so it's so funny that, we had that conversation because unfortunately we had got evicted and I had my first daughter at the time. And my mom had to move back to Flint. We were living in Metro Detroit at the time. And I had to figure out something. And I know that I didn't want to stay too far away from my daughter. If that's an hour away, and so I know I wouldn't really get a chance to see her like that. And so I said, I got to figure something else out. And my business partner at the time, he said, well, I don't want you to move to Flint. How about you move to my mom's basement? And I said, what? He said, man, we got to make this dream happen. And I'm like, okay. okay, well, let's see how it works out. And so I moved into his mom's basement. I'm literally sleeping on the couch. And, we selling some beats, and, we bought a booth, and we bought, some more keyboards. We bought a C24, and, the more money we made, the more stuff we accumulated.
You're investing. Yeah.
We're investing. And Chris ended up coming up after we finished doing an investment. Like, he's like one of the first artists who came to the studio after we got the basement set up real nice, And so after that, we ended up going downtown. We made the opportunity we gave ourselves the opportunity to go downtown, and that was just a dream in itself. And earlier you talked about how Detroit is rebuilding, and we seen downtown Detroit, like the aftermath of it. It looked like Gotham City.
Oh yeah.
It was the aftermath of all that crazy stuff happening.
What year is this? Just ballpark to set the context?
This is 07.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
This is 07. And so it feels great to be in prime time location. Y'all know what Woburn and Grand River looks like, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you really don't have any
neighbors. Town, dude.
Yeah.
It's a ghost town.
You got the DMC, and that's it.
Yeah, man. And
like that, and like a 2-year span there, more than 50% of the population left Detroit. Yes. In a 2-year span, they had lost more than 50% of its voting base.
It was unbelievable, man. We used to walk outside and we have any neighbors, we used to live, in a loft. We put the studio in a loft, and we had these high ceilings and concrete walls and these huge windows. It was absolutely beautiful. You can ask Chris about it. It was gorgeous. And I couldn't believe that we even put ourselves in that position to even live in that type of space. I'm like, man, we've come a long way. And to tell you how vacant it was, we could bang the music as loud as we wanted to, and never got a complaint. Never got one complaint our entire time being there.
Well, no one's coming, even if they call the cops. Yeah.
Hey, it's Ryan. Are you ever listening to something and wonder what the people look like? Well, fret not, listener. We have made a plan for you. You can get right over to our Instagram at conventionnot_podcast and see pictures of most of our guests, either Mike's goofy ass and I, or anything you really want to. Go over there, again, at Instagram at conventionnot_podcast. Take a second to follow us while you're there too.
So like Mike's not telling you, but like in his underneath his surfer hat is a hipster hat, and like this is the prime for like white kids in Metro Detroit. White kids, it's hipsterdom, right? And so it's this like Jack White. There's an influx into Detroit because it's cheap, and it's like we didn't have anywhere else to go either in a lot of ways, right? Like if you're out of college, there wasn't a good job for you. Like you made it through college, you did your thing, and so. I remember going to like parties in that area in that similar time frame where like there would be a bonfire in the backyard that would be pallets, and like you're in the middle of Detroit. This is urban environment, sidewalk streets for sure, right?
100%.
And so 100 hipster kids around drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon and like banging out the kinks or whatever, the kicks or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. I'm butchering it. I see the frustration I'm building there, Mikey. But like, it's like this is like such
you
a
call me a
transition.
hipster one more time, you're gonna get fucking. You're gonna get something, dude.
I'm trying to bring you stateside, so like if I can't get it with peace, I'm gonna get it with war. So I want to. I really, I really like want to like highlight how many really strong professionals, and they're just coming to flavor now. They're guys like you, Marv. There's so many strong professionals that came out of that era of Detroit right now, and they're kind of getting late 30s now, and they're software executives. They're in the mortgage industry. They're in the music industry. There are a lot of them, and the weird thing is that a lot of us aren't here anymore. A lot of us aren't in Detroit anymore.
That's true.
We were there in those times when it was desolate and it was there, and like the opportunities often took us elsewhere, other things took us elsewhere. That's an individual decision, but I really commend you, because for every one of us that kind of like made it out, quote unquote, that would be on a podcast today, like there weren't everybody didn't make it, right? Like that was followed by some really hard times in the area. So do your sights start to move away from Metro Detroit at some point in time? Like, is it work that takes you to California, or the weather, or a girl? Like, how does that start to build to where you are today?
Got you. So you talk about the mood and the vibe in Detroit. It was dreaming when we got there. You know, you guys are very familiar with the Thanksgiving Day parade. Literally, it's on Woodward and Grand River. So I literally step on my porch and there's turkeys riding by, right?
Yeah.
And that was just such a surreal feeling. Like I felt like I've made it, you know, you know, and, you know, you bring in that money, but you started to see things dry up because there was really no outlet, you know, and we're making our money off of people who, you know, rap in the studio at night, but go work their job at Chrysler, and Chrysler was struggling at the time, or Kmart, or wherever the heck they work at, you know, and giving us their hard-earned money for studio time and beats. And you started to see that start to dry up, right?
Yep.
And so me and my partner, you know, we started having different visions, right? And me personally, because of my stance, I always had like a conflict of direction when it comes to musical content, because if you know my background, you know my history, I'm not like a monk, or I'm not, you know, like a deacon in the church or anything like that. Nothing of the stretch of the imagination, but like my core is like God-based, right? That's who I am at my core. And so it's like, I was like, man, if you ever get a #1 hit and you do continue to pursue your likes of, you know, motivational speaking, or you're speaking on a platform and you're talking about, you know, God is great, right? But your #1 record is pussy popping on a handstand. That doesn't really go too well together, which a lot of my content that was landing and getting put on, you know, local radio was everything that I personally just didn't represent. I just kind of felt like I was being put in a box, and I just was like, you know what? I want to produce. I need to figure out a way where I can produce, where I have freedom of expression. I'm not trying to fit myself in a box. I'm not trying to, you know, make beats for a particular niche, but I can just make music based on emotion and feeling. And I was like, well, how can I do that? And, you know, TV and film is one. You know, what I'm doing now with Infinite Audio is another way. So me and my partner just like kind of disagreed on the direction of the company and how we should go about it, because I'm like, no, you know, the money is drying up. We need to figure out a different avenue. He's like, no, we need to continue this. I'm like, all right. So we went our different directions. And when I walked away, I completely just walked away not knowing what my next move was going to be. And I noticed in that whole period too, and if I can just be completely honest with myself and you guys, like, I think I lost my humbleness, right? Sure. Because you create a couple of things in your mind and create a couple of business plans, and everything that you're doing is working. You know, you kind of get a little cocky, you know, and I think I started feeling myself a little bit too much. And I think I started feeling like I just couldn't miss, right? And I started losing myself in that process. And the more I lost myself and the more we disagreed, the more, you know, you started to kind of see the business dissipate. And I said, you know what? Not only am I tired of the type of music that I'm creating, I'm tired of myself. So it's time for me to sit it down, time for me to walk away and get recentered. I don't know where my income is going to be. I don't know where my next dollar is coming from. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I need to walk away. And when I walked away, I was unemployed for about a year and a half. And those were hard times because I literally couldn't, like, you know, you guys know what that era was. It's literally hard to find a job in Michigan, period, you know, during that time. And I couldn't find a job. And at that point, I think the greatest thing for me and myself was that's when I like really started discovering the power. I don't know if you guys are in this space at all, but that's when I really started understanding like the spiritual power that exists in the world, and I started utilizing it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's when everything changed for me. Everything changed for me. And
I mean, we hadn't talked in how long, you know.
It's magical.
I don't know. I feel like it was a couple years for sure. You know, just life. You know, I ended up, having a son. I mean, you make this transition, and I quit for a little bit too, for about 2 years. And so I was in this period where I wasn't making music, and I was just going through a real difficult time in my life. You quit music
too, did you, for a second?
And for some reason, DeMarvelous reached out, and I don't know what it was, but he reached out at the right time in the right moment. And we didn't even talk about music at first. We just talked about life and like things I was going through. And that just really showed me like that our brotherhood was just that, it was so much deeper than music. And then I remember when I'm like, okay, I'm about to start making music again. DeMarvelous was the first person I hit up about getting some new tracks. And it was on since then, back on.
Okay.
Yeah, it was back on. To kind of jump on that bandwagon a little bit. So I was unemployed for so long. I was a stay-at-home dad. My wife was going to work, and she was bringing them home the bacon, and I was making sure the kids were doing everything that they were supposed to do. And it was very humbling. Like if I wasn't humble enough, I was definitely humbled during this period of time. And I ended up getting a job at a company doing international relocation. And the day I got hired at this job is the same day my wife got fired from her job. so that was, now she's unemployed, and the job that I'm working is not really enough to support the house. And so too many weeks straight where you're not making ends meet, you get desperate. You're like, I'd do anything. Every time I got paid, my bank account went further in the negative. I don't really understand how that works, but that's what was happening to me at the time.
Vultures. It's the vultures. Yeah, they knew it.
It was horrible, man. Yeah. And I literally, I said, God, man, this is tough. I don't care what it takes. Listen, you point and I will go. Like it doesn't matter, man. Like you point and I will freaking go. And I was sitting on the couch one day because I was working at this company for, a few years, and I just felt purposeless, like completely purposeless. And I didn't feel like I was fulfilling any of the things that I set for myself out to do, none of the above. And I literally broke down in tears. And my wife walks in and she says, what's wrong? Like, why are you crying? I was like, man, I am lost. I really do not know what to do. I'm sitting in this cubicle every single day of my life, and I just feel like I'm wasting my life, and I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. And she was like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I really don't know. And so she asked me, well, you need to take some time and really figure out what it is that you want out of life. And I said, yeah, I know. I need to figure this thing out. And so she asked me, what one of my friends lived here in California. She asked me what he do for a living. And my friend, he was a door-to-door salesman. And I was like, nobody's going to be a door-to-door salesman. That's a
thing of the past, right?
Yeah, that's a thing of the past. But on top of that, like, where's your pride at, right? And I could never in my life imagine myself doing it. But because times are so hard, I said, you know what? I'll do it. I'll freaking do whatever I have to do to get myself out of this horrible place that I'm in. And so I ended up, traveling to this whole story. I don't want to be flabbergasted. I don't know this podcast episode is about me, but I'm trying not to be all over the place when I speak about this. But when I started really receiving spiritual signs about my journey, my father-in-law, which is my wife's father,
I feel you.
Took his wife to a stable to go horseback riding. And to be quite frank, none of my people go horseback riding. I mean, black people. Yeah, that's just not something that we naturally do. You know, nobody from Flint, Michigan, nobody from Detroit that, you know, that's black really kind of do that. You know, it's a few,
That's
but
fair.
the mass
That's
majority
fair.
of us don't do it, you know. And so when he said, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna take my wife horseback riding," I'm like, "What? Horseback riding? What the heck?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so it was just random, man. And so we get there, and we're sitting in the stables, and a lady is actually handing us all a horse, and she's literally handing us the horse that's right in front of us. And she gets to me and don't hand me the horse that's right in front of me. She stops and looks at me for about 4 or 5 seconds and says, "I have the perfect horse for you." I'm
Uh-oh.
like, okay, what is this about? And so she goes around to the next aisle, grabs a horse, and comes back around. She said, "This horse name is Aurora. She's for you." And I've never rode a horse a day in my life. But me and that horse was best friends. You would think I was riding for 20 years. We connected on a different level. After I finished the horseback ride, I'm trying to walk out the stable, and the horse literally tried to follow me out. And the instructor was like, "Turn around. She's trying to follow you." And I turned around. I was like, "Oh, my gosh." And I reached up to hug the horse, and the horse put his nose in my arm. It was the weirdest thing in the world, man. And I'm like, how in the world did she know that I would connect with this horse like this? This is weird. And so we're in the car. I asked my wife, I said, "That got to mean something." And she said it does. And so, like we all do, we Google it. Like, what does it mean if you see an aurora in a dream or something like that? And it meant you're going to receive an opportunity that you might be too afraid or lazy to take action on.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't see any opportunities in my near future, right? And so that day I was sitting on the couch, you know, my boy told me what he did, and I said, "I'm not doing that." And then a light bulb went off in my head. I said, "Wait a minute. I can leverage the network that I have with my current job with the job out there, and I can make a good living for myself." I was like in a perfect position, you know, but I was like, but could that really work? You know, could it really work? And, you know, and I said, I don't know. And so I said, I called him back. I said, "I know I said I didn't want to do it, but, you know, let's talk about this more, you know? And so we talked about it, and I said, "You know what? I want to try it out." So we freaking have a conversation. He calls a supervisor, which is really weird. He ends up getting fired, and they still take his recommendation to take me on, right? How this stuff works, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You know, and so they didn't give me a for sure decision. And so I'm calling around to different landlords, and I speak to a landlord, and he said, "Well, we have an opening for the house that you're looking at. Can you make it out here on December 5th? And I'm like, "Yeah, we can make it out December 5th. I don't have a job lined up," but I just tell them, "Yeah, we can make it out here December 5th. I don't have $1 in the bank account."
Say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, we'll figure it out later. And it's like 2 weeks away from December 5th. And so I asked my wife, where are we going to get the money to fly? Because flying from Michigan to California is like $500-600. Yeah, easily. And she was like, "Baby," you know, she went searching, and she found some tickets on Spirit, and she found some tickets for like $260 for us both round trip.
Damn.
Total. And it rung a bell in my head, and randomly I had $260 in the PayPal account. Exactly. From some beats that I randomly sold from a client that I hadn't heard from. And so I said, "Oh, you know what? I got $260. It's been sitting in the PayPal account for like 3 or 4 months. Let's do it," you know. And so we got here, and we signed the lease, not even knowing for sure if I was even going to get the job, you know. And I didn't know if I was making the most idiotic decision of my life or if I was just literally following Aurora, right? And so we get here, and, you know, I sign the lease, and eventually I find out that I do get the job, and I'm in Canada. And when I'm in Canada, I meditate every morning, and I'm in Canada. I get up in the morning and I go downstairs and I meditate, and God says, "What do you want? What exactly do you want?" And I say, "Well, I mean, spiritually, like physically, he said, what do you want? And I just literally started naming everything that I wanted, whether it was peace in my house, a great relationship with my kids, financials, no matter what it was, I literally asked for it, right? And I get upstairs and I go to the window, and there's a bus that goes under the window, and the bus number was 77. And immediately I get a spiritual inkling to Google Bible verse 7:7. And the Bible verse in 7:7 says, knock and the door shall be open, seeking you shall find. And I'm like, and asking it shall be given. And I'm like, this is interesting. This is really interesting. Okay. And I looked at, I'm getting ready to walk out the room, and our room number was 1110. And I Googled the Bible verse 1110, and it's Luke 1110. And it's the exact same verse that's in Matthew 7:7. And I didn't know verses said the same thing in the Bible. I just had no idea. So I'm like, baby, the Bible must be broke, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so that was like my confirmation of, hey, I'm making the right moves. Even though, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm making the right moves. And so I go completely on faith, and I get here, and things worked out, man. Everything just worked out perfectly. And I moved my family here a month after I get here. And, you know, we're living, and my wife asked me to go to Wendy's one day. And I didn't want to go, but I ended up going because wives always win the conversation, the arguments. And I pull out my Wells Fargo card, and of course there's a horse, the logo of the horse on the Wells Fargo card. And I'm like, And she said, what? I said, I'm looking at this Wells Fargo card, and it has a horse on it. It's just making me think about Aurora and how this whole journey started. And she said, yeah, isn't it amazing? Isn't this beautiful that everything is working out? I said, yeah, it is absolutely amazing. And I pay for my food, and the lady gives me the receipt, and the name of the cashier, her name was Aurora.
Yeah.
Her name was Aurora. And I have that, and I can actually send it to you guys. But it's just all those signs that add up along the way to let me know that I'm on the right track. And when I put myself in a position, I know I'm getting long-winded. I want to talk about Chris and how he came back into my life. When I got in position, you know, I got my finances back in order. I got my credit together. I was in a good space. I said, you know what? I'm going to get into real estate. And my wife said, that's not what you moved here for. She said, you moved here because you said you're going to get back into pursuing your dream of music. You don't want to feel empty. She said, real estate was your second goal. That wasn't your first. And I said, but I don't even know what I'm going to do. And so she said, just do what you always do. Continue to follow the signs. She's like, look where we are. And so I said, okay. So I went and reinvested in myself. Everything that I lost, I went and got it back. Instead of investing in real estate, I got a whole bunch of music equipment and started making music. And out of nowhere, Chris hits me up. And this is like 2 months down the line. And he says, hey, what are you doing nowadays? And I said, nothing, man. I said, it's interesting that you called. I just finished making the music. I was actually getting ready to ask you that. Are you making beats still? And I'm like, yeah, I just started back, man. I reinvested in myself, and I got a bunch of equipment. Sure, yeah, I'm making beats, man. And he said, can you send me some stuff? And so I sent him over some stuff. And that in itself manifested into me signing my first official production agreement with Warner Chappell, right? And so I landed my first official gig because I was obedient to what my goal was, right? And he hit me up out the blue. Everything worked out, and I was like, wow. And it was just so amazing seeing my production on all these major TV shows, you know, all these different networks. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. What if I would have tried to go into real estate? None of this would be happening right now. You know, so that's how Chris came back into my life, man. And I'm just so happy to be in a position that I'm in, because things have just continued to get better and better as I continue to stay connected to the divine.
Wow. That was long, but I wouldn't have asked you to remove any part of it. It really kind of envelopes your whole story, Marv. And like, I don't know the guy from 20 years ago, but I feel like I really, really know this guy today. And like, it makes me appreciate so much more like the value to you in what you're doing today by not only being able to still be in music, but it really resonated with me when you said how difficult it was to collaborate with an artist and then ultimately be so disappointed in the product. You know what I mean?
100%.
And like now, I'm not saying you have more control, but it's just it's almost like a completely different niche of music. You know what I mean? Where you still get to be so greatly involved and contribute so much. But I don't know. I feel like there's maybe less nefarious realms it can end up in. I mean, in the TV and, you know, podcast space and YouTubing. And dude, from a business perspective, it seems like a no-brainer. You know what I mean? It's one thing to deal with like up and coming artists who are like, hey man, this is all I got. But I feel like most podcast people are idiots like Ryan and I, who are just like, man, we don't know what we're doing, but we got some money and I think your music will make us sound more professional, right? Like, that's a good market. That's a good market to tap into, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's been extremely fun. I think the last placement that we got, I forgot what movie was that, but the guy was in the bathroom, and when he came out the bathroom, he went into the strip club, and Ain't Real was playing. I think that was the most craziest scene that we've had so far. But he was in the strip
show
club,
Tijuana.
and I was like, okay, this is
yeah,
this is
exactly.
But you can't control that, man. You can't control.
I was going to say it still ends up somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tijuana,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that's what I wanted to kind of like lean towards. I mean, I think we've touched upon infinite audio a lot today, and we're, you know, our audience is going to be definitely hearing it from here on out on the podcast itself. If you could like kind of do a better job than I did of actually like promoting the product and what it's catered towards, whatever your pitch is, Marv, like I'd love to have you share that real quick.
Absolutely. When I started looking into the market, I realized a lot of YouTubers, a lot of podcasters, the biggest problem that, you know, creatives have is getting flagged for their music. You know, you can't just go put, you know, a pop culture song on your YouTube channel and think it's going to fly. You're going to get flagged. And if you get flagged one too many times, guess what? They're going to take your account down, right?
Come after you, right?
Yeah, they're going to come after you, right? And so I realized that there was a huge need in the market. And I realized the market is something that I personally just wanted to be in. So what Infinite Audio is background music. But the cool thing about it is the fact that typically when you hear background music, it's kind of rinky-dink, right? It's sound like it's very repetitive. It sounds very goofy sometimes. And it's like, man, I want some industry standard music on my podcast. I want some industry standard music on my YouTube channel. And that's what Infinite Audio is. You know, we have several different genres, from R&B to hip hop to pop to Latin to reggae. Like, we literally produce any and everything to kind of capture the mood for your YouTube channel, for your podcast, so that you can have some great vibes while you're living your best life.
And it's like a subscription-based service, right? Instead of just buying one thing for a ton of money and that being yours, you kind of have some options and some flexibility on that?
Absolutely. So you have three options. You can do Infinite Audio, where you have unlimited access to our music library. Once you download the music is yours forever. You can use it as much as you want to, when you want to, how you want to. And then for more budget-friendly and conscious, we have Audio Essentials, where you just download 5 a month. And if you don't download those 5 tracks a month, your tracks roll over, your credits roll over. And then we have the one that's right in the middle, which is Audio Plus, where you have the opportunity to download 20 tracks per month.
Yeah, see, that's what I love, man.
That's
so cool.
Yeah, I think it's something that it used to be a different thing with artistry, right? And so streaming music has gone through its life cycle, and now we're starting to be on the back end of this. I joked a little bit about Napster earlier, but you know, the world of at that point in time to be where, you know, most people don't want to steal things from, especially creatives don't want to steal things from other creatives. And so we'll save the whole like explanation about why that's important. We talk about that a lot on these episodes, you know, certainly with the addition of Chris and understanding about like how you build revenue and you support your family that way. But I think that like this type of a service is something that, you know, not only our listeners hopefully start to work with, but if I wanted to procure lyrics to go along with that type of music? Like, and I know we're getting kind of like to the end of our hour here, but could you like give us like a couple pieces of advice on that? Like if I really did want custom, and you know, certainly this is an ad for DJ Skrilla, reach out to DJ Skrilla and do that type of a thing, but not really. I mean, like I think that this is something that people don't necessarily know about. I mean, you know, Mike and I spend a lot of time trying to invest in the creative part of what we do, because this is not a show for money. It, you know, builds a little bit here and there and does these things, but like if I really wanted to make like custom music, how could I do that after I engage with your site and after I get to that point?
And when you say you want to make custom music, what do you mean? Like
I have a YouTube channel and it has 10,000 subscribers, or I have a podcast like this one and it has, you know, a couple thousand subscribers. And I say, you know, I'd like to have an opening, or I'd like to have some lyrics to go along with what I do. Like, is that an easy step? Is that something that's easy to explain, or how to contact artists to build that type of music as well?
Right. So in the event that you want to have like a theme song put together for your introduction, right? I think the first step is to find an artist that you would like to do your theme song, right? And then find a producer to craft that theme song for you, right? And sometimes you meet a producer and that producer can actually find an artist for you. That's actually a great niche. Something that Infinite Audio is going to do in the future here with the next 2 months with the website is have the ability to provide a VIP custom subscription where you get 2 custom tracks a month based on what you're looking for. And so you'll fill out this questionnaire and we'll create 3 drafts for you. And at that point, you'll be able to choose from the drafts that you like and apply them to your show and use them for the lifetime of the licensing.
Oh, I love that. Okay. That's really cool. That's really cool. I feel like we could go on talking for hours. We haven't even got to Romulus basketball yet.
Not at all.
Maybe we'll have to schedule that for a different time. Hey, listen, if I want to follow you, if I want to get out, I want to learn about Infinite Audio. Again, Convention Podcast is, you know, Infinite Audio exclusive now. But how do I do that? If I want to follow you or reach you, how do I do that? What's the way? What's the way to do it?
Absolutely. So we're most active on Instagram. We're building our Instagram following there, so we're all hands on deck there. And so you can reach us at Instagram, Infinite Audio Music, at Infinite Audio Music, and then our website is www.infiniteaudiomusic.com.
Awesome. Thanks. We're Convention Not Podcast. We're Instagram too. That's the place, right? Insta. That's the jam. At Convention Not _podcast. We really appreciate you carving time out today. This is the middle of the day for you in California, so it's certainly much appreciated. Gentlemen, we got anything more to add?
Just gratitude, Marv. Thank you so much, honestly, man. Like, I know sometimes we dig into some areas there that not everyone's excited to talk about, but like I said, your whole story, I think, is beautiful. So it's worth sharing, and I'm really excited our audience is going to get to hear it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here today. Things like this and being able to talk about my story and communicating with guys that they get it, but I'm fans of. I actually watched, listen to the last podcast too, man. So I'm glad to have the chance to actually be on the show.
Wow, thanks for coming.
We'll get to your Kobe slander next time, okay?
Yeah, that's fair. We'll touch on that next time. I knew it.